Published in many national newspapers including Indian Express, Economic Times and Times of India in the Speaking Tree column. His writings in English have been translated into several foreign languages including German, Chinese and Romanian, and several Indian languages including Kannada, Telugu, Bengali, Hindi and Marathi. He is the author of 17 books. So please go through all of his books. And again, we would like to welcome His Grace Chaitanya Prabhu to ISKCON of Silicon Valley. We are very fortunate to have him and getting his association. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Back to you, Prabhu.
Possible to connect, or I'll give the PPT if you have pen drive. I can just use. Thank you. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. So I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. Is my audio clear behind also? Okay, thank you. So I have been discussing this 4-part series. That was my plan before nature interrupted in its own way. I disrupted some of the plans. So I discussed the first 2 sessions in this 4-part series. It's called Krishna's Ladder of Love, explaining how Krishna is very understanding and accommodating in the Gita. He is not judgmental, and therefore spiritual life is not 1-0. It is not digital, but it is analog. It is progressive. So I'll do a quick recap of what was discussed. I won't go into the details of that because I want to focus on today's topic. So Krishna talks about these 4 levels from 12.8 to 12.11. So 12.8 is Mayeva Mana Dhatsva Mai Buddhim Niveshaya, that live with your mind and intelligence absorbed in me, Krishna says. And in one sense, that's the highest level. That's the perfection of life. When we love someone, we are naturally absorbed in that person. Then the level below that, Krishna says, is you develop desire for me. That is the topic which we'll be discussing today. Athachittam samadhatum nashaknosi maisthiram abhyasa yogena tato mam ichchaptum dhananjaya. Okay, this is strange. So, okay. So this is the level which we are going to discuss today. Develop the desire for Krishna. And below that, Krishna says, okay, if you can't practice the process of sadhana bhakti to develop desire for me, then you can work for me. That you can actually, athaitadapya shaktosi kartum, he says that, abhyasepya samarthosi matkarma paramo bhava madarthamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsasi. So in this, it discusses the topic of how to work as a form of worship. That work is not intrinsically worship, but it can be made into a form of worship. And then below that, Krishna says, if you cannot connect with me at all, then at least connect with something bigger than yourself. Develop some level of selflessness. And that will help you move forward in your life, Krishna says. So, there is a abhyase atachittam, what is that? Athaitadapya saptosi kartum madhyogam ashritaha sarva karma phalatyagam tatah kuru yatatmavan. In this way, yatatmavan, act according to the nature of your soul. The nature of the soul is to care for something bigger than itself. Because ultimately, the soul is meant to care for Krishna because we all are parts of Krishna. Till we can reach the level of caring for Krishna, the soul is meant to care for something bigger than oneself. So work for some good cause, some higher cause. So we discussed the previous two levels. Today I'll focus on, try to focus the mind on Krishna to connect with him. So this is a somewhat of a diagrammatic depiction over here. So it's like a ladder, and here I'm going to focus on 3 rungs because the 4th rung is, we could say, pre-devotional. 12.11 is pre-devotional, and 12.8 to 12.8, 10 are devotional levels. So let's look at the devotional levels. And in the devotional levels, we had absorption in Krishna, that's 12.8. Then fixing the mind on Krishna, focusing on Krishna. To some extent, absorption is natural, spontaneous. Whereas when we say fix, that is more of conscientious, effortful. And then below that is working for Krishna. Within that, there were 2 levels. There could be direct service to Krishna, where, say, we come to a temple and do some seva. And the second is that we reconceptualize, re-envision our work, our professional work, our family work, all that there is there as a service to Krishna. So today let's focus on this intermediate level, fixing the mind on Krishna. So the way I will be doing this is, we will go over each line of the verse and we will be discussing specific words from the verse, from that line, and I'll elaborate on them. Okay. So any questions or clarifications at this point before we begin today's class? Okay. So let's recite this verse once again. Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknosi mainsthiram abhyasa yogena tato mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. So as I said, let's go line by line and verse by verse in it. So I said, overall our purpose is to reconceptualize spiritual life. That it is not digital but analog. Why is such reconceptualizing essential? It is so that we can be compassionate toward others and even toward ourselves. Depending on our previous cultural upbringing, depending on the formative influences in our devotional life, we all grow with certain conceptions of this is what is the essence of spiritual life. And actually, we could say if Krishna is at the center, we all gain access to Krishna through different things. So somebody may say that unless you wake up in the morning at 4 o'clock, you are not a serious devotee at all. or 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock or whatever somebody, different people will say different things. I was in one place in India, there are 2 centers, and one of them has Mangalarti at 4:30, the other has Mangalarti at 5 o'clock. And the devotees who have Mangalarti at 4:30, they say, those people, Krishna is not going to accept their Mangalarti because they are not following Prabhupada. Prabhupada said Mangalarti means 4:30. Well, okay, that is true, but then, if you see, initially when Prabhupada started Lower East Side, he didn't have Mangalarti at 4:30. He had much later when devotees would come. So Krishna is Bhavagrahi. So sometimes I'm not saying Mangalarti is not important in the morning, but for different people, based on their particular conceptions, they may consider this is the most important thing. And that is to be respected in the sense that, if we see, Krishna is inaccessible for all of us. Krishna is, as I say, atindriya, he's beyond our senses. So adhokshaja. But that adhokshaja, Lord, becomes within our anubhava. He becomes manifest to us. Swayameva spuratyada. So he becomes manifest to different devotees in different ways. And then those things become the most important thing for that devotee. Somebody may say that, if I fast Nirjala on Ekadashi, then I get so much strength. I feel I'm committed in my spiritual life. I feel so much enthusiasm. I feel so much energy. Yeah, that may be true for them. But for somebody else, they fast Nirjala on Ekadashi, they don't feel strength. They feel their strength draining away. They can't do anything. So what happens is, based on the conceptions that we may have acquired, we may think, if I can do this, then I'm a serious devotee. If I don't do this, I'm a non-serious, I'm a worthless devotee. And we may feel it like that ourselves, and we may treat others like that. And then we may close the doors on spiritual life for many people for whom we should be actually opening the doors. Maybe they can't come to all the distance that we want them to, but that's okay. So 1-0 is not the only way to conceive spiritual life. And this multi-level approach to spiritual life is what Krishna's teachings are. So that's what our focus over here is. So let's begin with Atha Chittam Samadhatum. That's the first line. So Atha itself indicates Krishna is giving if. He's giving multiple options. If this doesn't work, you can try that. If that doesn't work, you can try that. So in that sense, Atha, if. Chittam Samadhatum. Now the word Chitta is a common word which comes in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone remember any other verse where the word Chitta comes? Famous verse? Yes. Macchitta madgata prana bodhayantaha parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So macchittaha. And there in 10.9 in the Gita, Prabhupada translates Macchitta very beautifully. He doesn't simply say that my devotees think about me. Macchitta. He says, the thoughts of my devotees dwell in me. So Chitta, what does it actually mean? Sometimes it translates as mind, sometimes translated as consciousness. So what exactly is it? In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and especially in the commentaries by Vyasa and others, this concept is talked about elaborately. That there is Chit. We know the Atma is Sat, Chit, Ananda. So I have a text-to-speech software which often reads out text. If I am not able to hear, if I'm not able to read, then I have it read out. So one of the errors it makes always is that whenever, say, if I'm writing an article, the soul is Satchitananda. So the software reads that soul is Saturday Chitananda. So that concept, the word Sat is not, Chit and Ananda are also not there exactly in English. But Sat is equated with Saturday, the short form of Saturday. So Sat, Chit, Ananda are actually, we could say, defining characteristics of the soul. Chit literally means consciousness or conscious. And Chitta refers to embodied consciousness. Or we could say conditioned consciousness. Recently one devotee wrote to me, he says, that, he said that I found that, you people are not teaching the Bhagavad Gita. Really? Okay, I said. He was a new devotee. He says, what happened? He said, you often say consciousness comes from the soul. But the Bhagavad Gita says consciousness comes from the body. Oh, really? I said, where does it say that? So he said in the 13th chapter of the Gita, where Krishna is talking about Sankhya, 13.6 and 7, there he says, Mahabhutanya Hankaro Buddhiravyaktamevacha. He goes and gives out a list of various components of material nature. And there he says, Etad kshetram samasena savikaram udaharatam. So Mahabhutanya Hankaro Buddhir Avyaktamevacha. Like that, Krishna gives a whole list, and there he gives one of the list as Chaitanya. Let's see if we can. No, I won't be able to get this. So Chaitanya is what? Sanghatas Chaitanya dhriti etad kshetram samasena. So Sanghatas Chaitanya is consciousness. So he says all these are either the parts of the field of kshetra, there are parts of material nature, or they are transformations of material nature. So he says consciousness is a transformation of material nature. Now, is consciousness a transformation of material nature? What do you think? No, then Krishna is saying it. So what is Krishna saying over here? How can Krishna, now of course Krishna has clearly says avinashi tu tadvidhyena sarvamidam tatam. That which pervades the soul is actually, that pervades the whole body, that is imperishable, that is consciousness. So there Krishna is talking about consciousness as the energy of the soul. That is pure. That comes from the soul. However, the way consciousness manifests in the world, that is called as not chit, but chitta. So our capacity to like things or to dislike things, that original capacity to be conscious, by which we may like some things or we may dislike some things. That capacity for consciousness comes from the Atma. But the specific proclivity of the consciousness, that doesn't come from the Atma. That comes from the conditioning around the Atma. What is the difference between capacity and proclivity? Capacity essentially means that just like there is light. So without an electricity source, the light itself won't come. We won't have any light at all. But depending on which particular color of film is there, particular glass color is there, we will have that kind of light coming out. So for example, if say somebody is born in South India, everybody needs food to eat. We have a body and we need food to eat. But somebody from South India, if they want food, they may think of, they want breakfast, they may think of dosas or idlis. That's what. If somebody in North India, they may like parathas. Now, is it that the soul's attraction for parathas or dosas is attraction for the parathas or dosas is coming from the soul? Then where is it coming from? Sorry? Yeah, it is coming from the covering around the consciousness. So when Krishna says that, kshetra vikara, what is the transformation of kshetra? What is the transformation of the material body? That is chitta. That is not chit. The original consciousness has no attraction towards anything material, nor any aversion to anything material. But the conditioned consciousness has that, and that comes from the conditioning around the soul. So that is the difference between chit and chitta. So when Krishna is saying, what we need to do is atha chittam samadhatum. So samadhan is satisfaction. Samadhi is the state of great satisfaction. For this pure soul, there is natural satisfaction. In fact, supreme satisfaction in Krishna. But that is the original taste of the soul. Like Prabhupada says that Krishna consciousness is the original consciousness of the soul. But the conditioned state is different. So in our state, atachittam samadhatum na shaknosi. So in our state, our Chaitanya is conditioned. So consciousness itself is spiritual. But the proclivities of consciousness may not be spiritual. In fact, most of the time, they are not spiritual. And that comes from the conditioning. So, athachittam samadhatum na. That when the chitta does not find samadhan in Krishna, So that's the previous state which Krishna has described, and we'll talk about attaining that state in our last session. So here, chittam samadhatum na shaknosi. So let's look at this. Na shaknosi mai sthiram. So I'll take 2 lines and then we can have pause for some reflections, questions also. Na shaknosi. That means Krishna is saying it's not possible. It's not, you're not able to do something. Nowadays, there is an increasing discussion, both in mainstream philosophical circles and even in some devotee circles, that do we really have free will? That is free will an illusion or is free will a reality? So once one devotee asked me this, one person asked this question, do we really have free will? So I said, do I have the free will to not answer this question? So the point is that we normally function with the idea that there is free will. In fact, if there were no free will, just let's start with the extremes. We'll come to the technicalities a little later. But if somebody had no free will, and yet that person was held accountable for something that they did, that would be considered evil, isn't it? It's like that person has no capacity to make a different choice. And then they make a particular choice and then we beat them, we punish them for that. So the fact is that the universe or God or whatever we want to say, the ultimate governing principle, to some extent at least, we are all held accountable for our actions. If we eat inappropriately, our health gets spoiled. Maybe not immediately, but gradually. If we drive rashly, the government holds us responsible. So we are all held accountable for our actions. And if our conditionings were such that we had no free will, then that would actually make God evil. Because what is he doing? He is telling us, don't do particular thing. But he has not given us the free will to do or not do particular things. So that would make actually God evil. It will make God into the devil. He won't be God, he would be the devil. So the denial of free will is something which is, from a logical as well as a devotional perspective, it is anathema. It is completely contrary to our experience, contrary to our understanding of who God is. Having said that, there is a difference between recognizing or acknowledging or even insisting that free will exists, and recognizing that different people may have different capacities to execute the free will. And that's why when some people say we don't have free will, they are actually mistaking between 2 things. There is free will and there is willpower. Now, are the 2 the same? Well, not exactly. It's like, to understand the difference, let's consider something free will and freedom. Consider a prisoner. Does a prisoner have freedom? Yeah, mostly you can say that in terms of what we normally consider as freedom, they can't go out of the boundaries of the prison, they can't do so many things even within the prison. So in that sense, the prisoner does not have freedom. But does the prisoner have free will? Yeah, of course. The prisoner can choose to maybe do some further education in the prison and learn and grow over there. Maybe they have a good career when they come out. Or the prisoner can associate with hardcore criminals and become a hardcore criminal oneself. So when we talk about freedom, we are talking about the external facility. So free will is innate to the soul. But the physical capacity or the physical range over which a person can execute that free will, that may be taken away. If the person has done something wrong, or if that person has been framed because of some reasons, then their freedom may go away temporarily. But freedom going away is not the same as free will going away. So free will applies to the physical domain. And willpower applies to the psychological domain. What do I mean by psychological domain? See, everybody has the free will to desire to do something. Say, for example, we may desire, okay, today's Ekadashi, I want to chant 64 rounds. We have the free will. But we may sit down and start chanting, and we may find that our mind wanders so much, and we just are not able to focus. We are feeling like a big burden, our head is straining, and we just can't continue. So there, it's not that we lack free will, but we lack willpower. And different people have different degrees of willpower. So when people say that, oh, we don't have free will, what they usually mean is that we all don't have willpower. And yes, we all don't have the same degree of willpower. That is true. So, and Krishna is saying, na shaknosi, it is not possible for you. If it is not possible, what is he talking about? Is it free will? Is it freedom? Is it willpower? Willpower, yes, thank you. That one does not have the willpower to keep the mind fixed on Krishna, to keep our consciousness absorbed in Krishna. So Krishna is not demanding that this is what you have to do. No, he says, okay, if you can't do it, that's okay. There is a way for you also. So we see, sometimes we conceptualize spiritual life as simply like obedience to instruction. And yes, that is one aspect of spiritual life. But another aspect of spiritual life is also negotiation to understand what instruction is followable for a particular person. So we see this, there is a famous pastime from the Bhagavatam which illustrates this instruction changing to negotiation. You think of this, which pastime is it? Yes, Dhruva, thank you. So Narad Muni says to him that, honor, dishonor, these are all just temporary things. Don't bother about them. Just go back and enjoy your kingdom. You will become the king eventually. He says, no, he says, your words are true, but I cannot follow them. So what is he saying? That the instruction may be valid, but it's not valid for me. So this is, sometimes negotiation is required. And that's what happens is, that if we have a 1-0 conception of spirituality, then the problem is, if I can't do this, then I'm being disobedient. And if I'm disobedient, then I'm lost in my spiritual life. But it's not necessary that somebody is being disobedient or defiant just because they can't follow a particular instruction. And that's why there has to be this facility for negotiation. And the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple, or the Shiksha Guru and the student, any guide and the students, it has to be, yes, we accept the principle that we have to follow instructions, but in practice, there has to be a place for negotiation. Otherwise, things will not be steadily moving forward. Sometimes we'll be given things which are not practical. And then it can become a problem. So, na shaknosi mainstay. So, there's no judgment over here. Oh, Krishna is not saying over here, you are so fallen that you can't be absorbed in me. No, there is not even a tone of judgment, not even one word of judgment. Okay, it's just objective acknowledgement. Okay, this is what you can't do. If you can't do this, then you do this. Sometimes, what happens is that there are many levels of moral judgment that just become implicit in certain discussions. But, say for example, we may use the word fallen, or we are all fallen souls. Now, within devotee circles, it is just common usage and we accept it. But if you're talking with new people and we tell them, we are all fallen souls. Really? First of all, I don't even know I'm a soul and I'm fallen also. So, that we can't impose moral standards on those who have not yet even accepted that framework of morality. We can't impose moral standards. Say, we may say that meat eating is a terrible activity. If somebody is eating meat, they're fallen. Well, yes, but they may not consider meat eating to be anything fallen, isn't it? Now we may say, isn't it objectively true? Well, when we are trying to develop a relationship with somebody to get them to come closer to Krishna, it is the objective truth alone is not what is important. The subjective truth is also important in terms of, are we making Krishna consciousness attractive to them? Bhakti is not just about speaking, sharing bhakti is not just about speaking the truth. It is about inspiring, seeking for the truth in the audience. It is not just speaking the truth. It is what? Inspiring, seeking for the truth. That they should feel attracted to the truth. And if we present the truth in a way that is judgmental, that is moralistic, that is condemning, then we are alienating people from Krishna. And that's why we have to be very careful about how we present. So Krishna is showing here, okay, if you can't do this, do this. There's no judgment over here. So judgment can be an expression of compassion at times, or it can be an expression of condemnation. Let's see how. Some people say that, so let's try to understand this point first. Compassion or no compassion. So when it's opposite of compassion could be condemnation. So when is it compassion? When we understand the level of a particular person and then we see how best we can help them. Say it's suppose somebody's a child who is learning to walk. And then the small child takes a few steps and they wobble and they are about to fall. Then we go immediately and help that child. So, okay, this child can take these many steps, but they cannot take these steps further. So that's understanding the level. So if somebody is, say, they speak English, but they're not very comfortable with English, then we may, if we know their local language, we can speak in that local language. So we understand the level so that we can help them move forward. But condemnation means, lack of compassion means, oh, you are so fallen, you reproach them. We reject them. And that is something which can very quickly become alienating. So judgment is something which is required for all of us. Some people say, be non-judgmental. And yes, be non-judgmental in the sense that in the second sense that don't condemn people, don't look down on people. That is true. But ironically what happens is, those people who say be non-judgmental, sometimes they are the most judgmental toward anyone who is not non-judgmental, according to their conception. For example, you should not judge people like this. Well, aren't you judging me like this? When you are saying you should not judge people? Well, so the idea is, yes, we cannot make non-judgmentality into an absolute virtue. It's an important virtue. Why? Because we want to have a relationship with others. But when any virtue, apart from bhakti, is made into an absolute virtue, then it becomes a problem. Because what happens is, that virtue does not have that status. And when we give that status to that virtue, then, say, non-judgmentality is wonderful. But we humans, we survive and we thrive by making judgments. So if you tell our children that don't be non-judgmental. Well, yes. But does that mean that if among your school circle there are some kids who are using drugs, be non-judgmental about them? Well, okay. You don't have to label them as drug addicts, but you have to keep a distance from them, isn't it? So judgment is required. But why are we doing judgment? So Krishna is not saying, oh, whatever, whether if you can fix your mind on me or you can't fix your mind on you, it's all the same. You're all at the same level. No. That's not true. There are different levels. So in that sense, Krishna is exhibiting judgments, but Krishna is not being judgmental. He's exhibiting judgment means, okay, this is one level, this is one level, this is one level. Let's see which level somebody is at. But Krishna is not being judgmental in the sense that he's not condemning someone for not being at a higher level. In none of these verses is any judgmental tone come out. So that is the mood of Krishna over here, when he is making judgments, but at the same time he is being compassionate. And then so the first is, he is putting the level, Atchittam samadhatum na shaknosi mainsthiram. If we cannot be spontaneously absorbed in Krishna, then what to do? So we will discuss that, the second half of the verse. Any reflections or questions at this point? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for elaborating that Krishna is accommodative and it's a level, it's analog, not digital. But that somehow, that's something elaborates more in the nature of Sanatan Dharma, like worship in goodness, passion, ignorance. But if you see today's modern world, people can't understand that why this is variety is there. And means what I mean is like, although variety is there for advancement, but people get confused because of that variety, like that levels, different levels, and then they don't choose anything. And but so but in other religions or Abrahamic religions, there is not much variety. It's very like binary style, but they're more, sometimes it's more easy for people to follow. So can you elaborate more on that? Like,
so does the say the presence of variety lead to confusion?
Yes.
And the absence of variety makes it easier for people to follow?
Yeah.
See, if tomorrow, say, somehow there's a genetic mutation or some kind of cataclysmic change by which all variety in the world disappeared. Say we all belong to the same country, the same religion, same language, same ethnicity, maybe same gender. I don't know how we'll reproduce then. But let's assume all sources of variety, all disappeared. Would the world become a peaceful place? But tomorrow afternoon, we will find out differences to quarrel over. So the point is, differences are inevitable. If you consider the Protestants, if you consider the Christians, there are at least 55,000 Protestant denominations. And they keep increasing. 55,000 is actually what has been, like the Protestant directories list 55,000. So if you consider complexity, there's a huge amount of complexity. We may say that there are crores of devatas, but how many people are worshipping those crores of devatas? There are some prominent Panchopasana, prominent devatas that are being worshipped in that art tradition. So confusion will come from somewhere or the other. Because that's just the nature of the world. Even when there is one conclusion or one particular conviction, creed to be followed, there will be divisions within that. So having said that, it is our responsibility. What happened? Okay. It is our responsibility to present things coherently so that there's multiple levels of multi-level presentation. It doesn't confuse and alienate people. Actually, what you are saying could have been true for maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, even 5, 10 years ago. As the world is changing, people are, we could say, the postmodern ethos or the multicultural ethos. People actually appreciate that there are multiple levels and there are varieties. It's not just 1-0. And that is the strength which can be leveraged. Much of mainstream intellectual discourse in the world has been what is called as Eurocentric. Because Europe was what colonized the world initially. And then you could say that it was Eurocentric or specifically Anglocentric because it was British. Britain ruled major part of the world. And then we could say that it's Americocentric after the Cold War ended. And even before that, culturally, politically they might be to power, but America's cultural influence was far more than Russia's, Soviet Russia's. But over a period of time, what has happened? So because of that, certain thought systems were considered normative. And others were judged from that perspective. So for example, the very idea of religious tolerance. Now, at one level it is good because at least there are no conflicts. If there is religious tolerance, there will be no conflicts among religions. But another level, tolerance means what? I'm tolerating you. That means you are a nuisance. I would rather eliminate you, but I can't eliminate you, so I'll tolerate you. So that is not the Vedic ethos. Ekam sat vipra bahuda avadanti. There's one truth known by the sages know it by various names. So in that sense, what was normative? That there's one true religion, but others also should be tolerated. And religious tolerance was for many years, many decades considered to be a very cherished virtue. But now many more thinkers are saying that it shouldn't be just tolerance, it should be respect. It should be so. And if you see, that is the ethos of the Vedic tradition. So in that sense, if we present things properly, rather than causing confusion, we can actually have greater attraction for even people who do not commit to one particular path. They'll approach the broad-mindedness, they'll appreciate the broad-mindedness of the Vedic tradition. So it's our responsibility to present properly, so the confusion will be lesser. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for visiting ISV and starting this wonderful class. So Prabhuji, your point about do not present Krishna conscious in a judgmental or moralistic way, but present in a way that inspires them, right? So there are several kinds of people, and when we present Krishna conscious, some people, take it up and then they make progress. But some people, they are taking like years, like 6 to 8, 7 years, and then they do not start, but coming to the temple once in about 2 months, 3 months. Some people, they tried few things and they went away, and when we are trying to tell them, they more or less come up with meditation is good, and their own, like, there are some ways which attract them, and some people totally went away, completely ours. So how can we inspire those people, Prabhu? So basically, we have to do as it is, Bhagavad Gita as it is, but at the same time, how to inspire those people who came and who are very, very slow and who actually went away as well.
Yeah, it's true. See, first of all, spiritual growth is a multi-life process. And most of those who become serious in spiritual life, we don't know how many of them just become serious in this lifetime itself, or they already had some practice in the previous life because of which they're continuing on. So, firstly, don't necessarily take it as a personal failure if somebody doesn't become serious. Prabhupada itself is a Mahabhagavat, but Prabhupada's own family didn't really become serious sadhaka bhaktas. They had bhakti in the sense that they would have deity, they would do some deity worship. But they were neither interested in serious sadhana, nor were they interested in prachar, in sharing Krishna bhakti, or associating Prabhupada in that. So that will vary from person to person. And we cannot override the soul's free will. So we as a movement may need to include different levels of commitment for different people. Like Prabhupada himself created the idea of life membership. So life membership was one level of connection by which people could say that, oh, we are also part of this ISKCON, Krishna consciousness movement. At the same time, they're not necessarily chanting a particular number of rounds or whatever. So whether we can also create affiliations at various levels for people so that they feel connected. At the same time, they don't feel too pushed. See, it is delicate thing. Everybody needs pushing to some extent. But if push too much, then instead of pushing inside the door, people get pushed out of the door. So we have to be careful about that. So that accepting, okay, if somebody is not ready to move forward, then we can follow at one level Krishna's principle, yatha mam prapadyanti. That means, we don't have to spend a lot of time on people who are not very committed. But we don't have to make them feel guilty or rejected. Everybody who comes to, even sometimes, to a spiritual group or a spiritual organization, they want to feel connected. They want to feel a sense of belonging. So it is a challenge for us. How do we give that sense of belonging to people even without necessarily being able to, without their necessarily coming to a particular level of commitment? If we consider how our movement started, Ravindra Sarupur has written an article about the history of congregational preaching and how it started in ISKCON. And he said, now normally we think it's so common, there are weekly programs in people's houses. But when ISKCON started, there was no concept of a weekly program at all. It was like you have daily morning Bhagavatam class, and most of the places they had evening Bhagavad Gita classes. And the idea is if you become serious, then you move into the temple. So initially, most of Prabhupada's followers were Westerners. And then when Indians started coming, then for the Western follow the Prabhupada preaching meant you make people into devotees, means that you get them to move into the temple. And then what happened was that they started talking with these Indians, but these Indians had come to the West for improving their material prospects and developing their career. So they had no interest in moving to the temple. And so the Western devotees said, these are not going to become devotees. And although they would come every Sunday for the program, they would not pay much attention to them. So Ravindra Swami said that the situation would be at that time that if somebody had asked these Indian devotees at that time, then this is the early 1980s, late 1970s, early 1980s, that which group do you belong to, which religious or spiritual group you belong to? So they would have, all these people who are coming to the temple, they would say, we are the Hare Krishnas. But he says, if somebody had asked us, are they Hare Krishnas? No, they are not Hare Krishnas. So what had happened was, for the devotees in the temple, their idea of who are the Hare Krishnas, those who stay in the temple, those who move into the temple. And those who are not doing that, they're not Hare Krishnas. So now, of course, our definition has expanded, because we have become primarily a congregation movement. So we need to create some level of acceptance and affiliation for people who may not become very serious. Because that is, such people may also contribute in various ways. Like life members contribute in various ways, although they didn't become devotees. So that is our challenge. What do we do? How do we create like a multi-level connection where people, yes, there's always a pathway for people to move ahead, but there is not the constant push. And especially, we cannot guilt people into advancing spiritually. That means, what do I mean guilt people means? You come to a particular group and the first thing everyone asks is, okay, how many rounds are you chanting? How many rounds are you chanting? How many rounds are you chanting? And then you find that, oh, you are chanting the least number of rounds among everyone else. Then either you have to chant more rounds or you have to just get out of there. So that way sometimes it is okay to push people a little bit, but we can't guilt people into making spiritual advancement. So we need to create that acceptance. And yes, I say, such people, you don't have to spend too much time with them. But we need to create, because that is, in one sense, that's how we are replicating Vedic culture. That everybody is accepted at their place. This Mama Vartamanu Vartante Manushya Partha Sarvasha, with Krishna says 4.11. So I translate that as, I put it as English as, from your place, at your pace, access Krishna's grace. So from your place, at your pace, access Krishna's grace. Now we would want that your place go higher. We would want that your pace also go higher. But Krishna is accepting at your place and your pace also. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
You can send the mic behind.
Thank you, Chaitanya Prabhu. Every time you come up with wonderful topics and multi-class seminars. So we were very much looking forward to post-COVID. So thank you. You were discussing about willpower and free will. Please correct if my understanding is right or wrong. So willpower that we possess right now is a function of the free will that we used in the past to some extent. And maybe, of course, Krishna's plan could also be there. Is that the right understanding? And how do we increase that willpower, knowing that, okay, we cannot correct our past actions? How do we increase our willpower and determination?
Yeah. Just like our freedom, so is our present willpower a result of our past use of free will? Yes. Just like somebody's freedom. If somebody is in jail right now, it's generally because they used their free will wrongly and did something wrong. And if they use their free will well in the jail also, maybe they will be released faster, or maybe they'll put into better conditions in the jail. So this is dynamic. The same with respect of willpower. If our present willpower is constricted, that's because of past misuses of the free will, we can say. Now, generally, with respect to improving willpower, we just start with where we can. So, bhakti, that I'll come to if we get time today. See, there are many ways to increase our willpower. And any good activity, if we do repeatedly, that will become easier for us over time. Not immediately, but over time. However, there are certain habits which are very powerfully transformative. And bhakti is one of them, because bhakti brings about purification. What does purification do? Purification doesn't just increase our willpower, purification decreases our need for willpower. I'll explain the difference between the two things. See, any good habit if we develop, we can say I have increased my willpower. Say somebody decides, even from a sattvic perspective, I want to read books every day. And then they start reading. Okay, I can't read a lot of time, but I can read for 10 minutes every day. And they start reading for 10 minutes. They read for 1 month, they complete one book, a small book, and then they think maybe not 10 minutes, I can read for 30 minutes. There's nothing spiritual in those books, but they're developing that habit. And in one sense, the willpower they didn't have, they've developed that willpower. Okay, so in that sense, any good habit if we develop, if we do it consistently, with whatever capacity we have, our willpower will increase. So that is universal. But bhakti is more than any good habit, because bhakti practice, bhakti habits, they don't just increase our willpower. Because say if I decide I want to read Bhagavad Gita every day. So I also develop a habit of reading every day. So I read half an hour, 10 minutes, then I come to half an hour, whatever it is. But bhakti does one more thing. Because bhakti puts us in contact with Krishna, who is all pure. So that contact actually purges us, frees us of many of the impurities. And those impurities are what make us need willpower. Say for example, somebody wants to wake up early in the morning. But they can't wake up because say you say lack willpower, because there's lethargy. That is because of tamoguna. But if we start practicing bhakti yoga, we're connecting with Krishna and we are rising from tamoguna upward. So as we rise upward, then the need for willpower itself will decrease. So that's how bhakti yoga brings about a greater transformation. So just start with where we can, with whatever habits we can. And bhakti habits in that sense are the most potently transformative. Okay. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the wonderful lecture. So, Prabhu, the point of being inclusive is there in these verses. And if we see the conversation of Ramananda Rai and Mahaprabhu, so until the chanting of the holy name is reached, everything is said to be external. And at the chanting of the holy name, Mahaprabhu says, Eho haya, age kaho bhaya. So Mahaprabhu's mood was to ensure that people come to the level of accepting chanting as a spiritual practice, which will lead to their development of bhakti. The levels of bhakti that was mentioned before that, the karma mishrit bhakti, yat chakshnoshi, yat karati. So the levels that are being mentioned here and the level that you just discussed in your previous class, right? How do we understand and properly apply being inclusive, at the same time executing the will of Yuga Avatar?
Okay, it's a good question. And Mahaprabhu says that till somebody comes to the holy name, it's Iha Bahaya, Age Kahoar. I'm not sure that is chanting of the holy name specifically. It is glorification of the Lord. It's Kirtan. Kirtan doesn't necessarily mean chanting. The Bhagavatam is about Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, but neither Shukdev Goswami nor Parikshit Maharaj are chanting the holy names. So we can't have a very restricted definition of Kirtan as chanting. It is glorification of the Lord. From what I have read, now I'm open to be corrected about this, but one of my devotee friends has done his PhD in Bhakti Thakur. There was a remarkable absence of emphasis on chanting of the holy names in the outreach strategy that Bhaktivedanta Thakur told his Western disciples, or that his disciples who had gone to Europe to follow. Because what had happened was they used to associate the British. See what happened, there's a big difference between Americans and British were ruling India when Bhaktivedanta Thakur was sharing. and they had a particular conception of Indian religion and Indian spirituality. So chanting on the street was considered as typically sentimental. So they focused more on the teachings of love of God of Mahaprabhu. So it was not, so the kirtan can mean glorification of the Lord. And so chanting, of course, is required in terms of the holy name also, the Yuga Dharma. At the same time, there are 9 processes of bhakti, and kirtanam is bigger than chanting alone. Kirtan is also glorification of the Lord. So as long as one is centered on glorifying the Lord, then that is wonderful. And when we are talking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu talking with Ramanand Rai, that is a very exalted level of discussion. So from what I have seen, I talk with His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj also about how Prabhupada interacted with life members. Prabhupada never insisted on asking them, how many rounds are you chanting? Are you chanting Hare Krishna? They're part of a culture, they appreciated Kirtan. They probably did Kirtan in their homes, but they never took up japa. So it is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Prabhupada gave it a very inclusive name. He did not, within the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we could have devotees focused on book distribution, we could have devotees focused on Harinam Sankirtan, we could have devotees focused on Varnashram, we could have devotees focused on Go Seva, and all this is wonderful. But we can't reduce the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to the International Society for Varnashram or the International Society for Harinam Sankirtan. It is the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And that can be fostered in many different ways. So yes, chanting is important, no doubt about it. At the same time, there are other things also, other ways also in which people can raise their consciousness toward Krishna. And if somebody is immersed in glorifying Krishna, then that is also glorious. During the of his last day, of his last days, when Bhaktisarva Damodar Maharaj, at that time was organizing in 1976, a conference, Life Comes From Life, the first conference in Vrindavan. And Prabhupada was very animated. Before that, discussing about it. After that also, after it went through. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj came, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj also there, and there are other devotees who used to do kirtan. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked Prabhupada, so Prabhupada, would you like to have some kirtan now? Because Prabhupada was getting very animated, and Prabhupada didn't have much energy. I said, you should do this and you should do this. And Prabhupada just looked at Tamal Krishna Maharaj, what do you think we are doing? Are we having illicit sex now? So this is also kirtan, Prabhupada said. We are planning to glorify Krishna. So we should not have a restrictive definition. Now we can say, yes, Harinam Sankirtan will attract a lot of people. Yes, but there may be some people who may not be attracted by that. This is, you joined, like one devotee was telling me that he told his friend that he has now become, his parents has become a devotee. Oh, we didn't send you to Yale to join the group of people who dance on the streets. So that was their conception. So we don't want people's, how should I put it that? We don't want to reduce Krishna consciousness to certain cliched conceptions. Because those conceptions may attract some people, but they may alienate some people also. That's why Krishna consciousness is much broader. And my understanding there is a specific conversation about Gaudiya Vaishnavism. If you want to go in that way, then how much does Prabhupada talk about Gaudiya Vaishnavism in the entire Bhagavad Gita? Not much at all. Then is Prabhupada not following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? He is. Okay? But there's a gradual progression to bring to that level. Okay, thank you. Yes, Vandana.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So in my experience, I've felt like being grateful impacts my bhakti a lot. And sometimes I feel like even if Krishna has he's given a lot of things which I obviously don't consciously remember or recognize, but then that one thing that I wanted and that one thing that fell apart, sometimes it impacts my willpower. And I feel like sometimes that also maybe makes you question the faith. In one perspective, it's like, yeah, I'm unlearning and relearning what bhakti means, but it can also go on the other side. So how do we handle situations like that? Like how do I consciously be grateful and always have that faith as an unwavering, solid foundation?
Okay. It's an important question. I'd say that for all of us, we have experienced in some way or the other the potency of Krishna consciousness. And that can be the basis of our conviction and our gratitude. Now, having said that, there are, just as there are ways in which we have found Krishna consciousness stimulating and fulfilling and exciting, there are also ways in which we may have found Krishna consciousness challenging. And so we need to expand our conception of Krishna consciousness both ways. Because sometimes through that challenges will be resolved. Sometimes just the comfortable aspect of Krishna consciousness may make us complacent. So the idea is that where we are right now, that will be our basis. It's just like if somebody is starting some exercise routine. Now we start with some level of exercises and we get some benefit from that. Yes, exercising works. But then some certain workout routines may be very difficult for us. We say, okay, I'll put them off for later. Or then we can start with something which is a little bit challenging for us and then see how we move forward. So that's one aspect that we have to ultimately pratyaksha avagamam dharmyam, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 9.2, that it is experienced within our heart. And Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita says that Anubhav is the highest of pramanas. Yes, we may say Shabda is the highest, that is true. But in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the Gop Kumar goes to various places and he explains, hey, this is Vaikuntha is wonderful. At the same time, I want something more. That's Anubhav. So we cannot, see, we can argue with reasoning. We can even deny facts. But we can't really fight with experiences. So in that sense, our experiences are the foundation of our Krishna consciousness right now. So we can be open to new experiences. And if somebody's presentation of Krishna consciousness diverges radically from ours, then maybe we can, okay, this maybe Krishna manifests this way also, but this is not something which I can connect with. So keep a respectful distance from them. And then wherever, oh, yeah, I never thought of it like this. This makes sense. Let me explore this. So yes, keep our present foundation wherever it is. Preserve that. Be grateful for that. And then see which areas we can explore more. And that's how we can broaden or deepen our conception of Krishna consciousness. Okay? Thank you. Yes, behind there was a question.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the class so far. I just wanted to ask, in the beginning you were talking about how since Krishna is inaccessible, we often take like different manifestations as almost a proxy to him. I was wondering then, how can we see that these are genuinely spiritual? Because the skeptic will immediately declare it's just the result of the physical phenomenon. So if you feel good by getting up in the morning, it's just because your body feels good or so on. And also, like in your podcast with Radhika Raman Prabhu, you also talk about like 4 pillars or multiple pillars you can lean on in bhakti, but they also have like a physical manifestation to them. So how can we distinguish whether it's just the psychological benefit of it versus actually something spiritual?
Okay. So how do you differentiate between the psychological and the spiritual? So everything that we do in bhakti can have some psychological dimensions to it. See, one of my friends has done his PhD in atheism. So I've always read that. I learned a lot from them. So he says he was telling me that we have a very Mayavadi idea of atheism, in the sense that all atheists are not the same. There are some atheists who are rabidly anti-God, and there are many who they don't even like the word atheists or disbelievers. They say we are non-believers. The belief is just not a part of who I am. I don't bother about that part of my life. So anyways, why I was talking about this is that even within that particular demographic, there can be a wide variety of people. Somebody may be very environmentally conscious, somebody may be vegan, somebody may be very charitable. Humanity is complex. People are multidimensional beings. So, having said that there are, so just because there are certain virtues manifested, so we may say that, oh, this person was a meat eater, and they started chanting Hare Krishna and they became vegetarian. Well, somebody might come to that vegan kind of awakening without coming to Hare Krishna also. So the results can come from various ways. So phalena parichayate, we say that is the criteria. The fruit is known by, the tree is known by its fruits. However, that is not the only way to know it. That is one way to know it. And then we have to consider what is the process by which that particular fruit is coming. What is the worldview associated with the whole thing? So, yes, the fruits can come from various means, no doubt. Having said that, so this friend was telling me that there is now something called, there were new atheists, the two Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and all of them. And after 9/11, they became very aggressive and they said religion is the worst thing in the world, religion should be removed. But more or less, all the new atheists are somewhat influential. They realized that religion is not going to end. I was on the conference, I was at an interfaith get-together for Australia, and their topic was, why has God not died till now? What they meant was that some Friedrich Nietzsche's times, more than 100 years ago, the sociologists have been predicting the death of God, that God is dead. But religion seems to have a lot of staying power. So there are some atheists who say that, actually speaking, we recognize that religion serves some deep-rooted psychological needs of people. And that's why we can't give it up. So there's one atheist who has written a book, and he just won several, called Religion for Atheists. So what he means is that the sociological, psychological benefits of religion that are there, they need to be provided. Only then atheism will become popular. So they say that atheists should also have their own equivalent of churches. They should also have their atheist songs. And they should have their atheist icons. And he says, because these serve a human need. But then there is a difference over there. See, there is for example, I was talking earlier about belonging. So people want a sense of feeling that my existence matters. And you could say there is a social sense of significance. Say if I come to a community, and then everybody asks me, how are you? Everybody greets me, they talk with me nicely. I feel a sense of belonging. That is a social sense of significance. And they say the religious communities are very good in giving people that social sense of significance, that somebody cares for me. And they said atheists should be able to provide that. However, what they don't recognize is, yes, apart from providing a social sense of significance, religion, I'm using the word religion, spirituality here interchangeably, religion provides also a cosmic sense of significance. Not just that in this community, oh, I matter to people, people care for me. But in the universe itself, our existence matters. That's why I said that specific results may be replicated, but religion has a particular worldview. And the social sense of significance can be lost. Tomorrow the community might disintegrate. But the cosmic sense of significance is what is going to stay. So there are cases where, and that's why there are various reductionistic explanations of religion. But and they may work for many occasions. But they don't work. For example, why do people practice religion? Because they get a sense of community, they get a sense of belonging. Okay, that may be true. But then how do you explain cases where people practice religion at great social cost to themselves, when they are ostracized by their community? And not just by their community because they are following some other religion, but they are persecuted by the state because the state is against that religion, or state is against religion per se. So far from giving any psychological benefit, that sense of belonging is actually causing a lot of psychological trouble. If you feel lonely, you're physically persecuted, you're socially isolated, even rejected. So religion gives that cosmic sense of meaning, cosmic sense of significance. Yes, there is a higher organizing principle in the universe, and we are a part of the plan and purpose of that higher organizing principle. So that's why if we don't understand the worldview that is provided by religion in general, by Krishna consciousness in particular, you can always deconstruct individual practices and say these are psychological, this is psychological benefit, this is psychological benefit of this is psychological benefit of that. You can say rituals, the same thing done repeatedly, it makes the mind calm. That may be true. But the metaphysical aspect of it cannot be provided. And that's the key difference. So from an empirical perspective, I don't think you can make a categorical difference, because empirical, by definition, is empirical. So, and empirical and metaphysical are opposite. But it's the combined worldview. So each of the empirical things, or each of the psychological benefits that we may talk about that come from religion, you can talk about situations where the opposite comes and still people keep practicing. And that's why this reductionistic explanation fails over there. Now, having said that, the reductionistic explanation may be true also to some extent, in the sense that many people may come to a religion, follow a particular path because of the social dimension, because of the psychological dimensions. And when those psychological benefits stop, they may go away. So I come to devotee association because devotees are so nice and kind. But tomorrow something may happen. Maybe the nature of the world is, sometimes there are misunderstandings. Sometimes maybe I may be misunderstood and maligned, even in the devotee community. Then will I continue practicing bhakti at that time? That will be the test of my devotion. Did I answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. I was thinking more along the lines of you spoke about Anubhav Praman. So my question was more along those lines. So how can we distinguish whether a particular Anubhav is because of, say, psychology or because of spiritual upliftment?
How do we know whether a particular change is because of psychology or because of spirituality? I don't think it's possible that way. Just a particular change. Because it can, in general, whenever somebody gives a single cause explanation for something, reality is complex. When you give a single cause explanation to something, that often tells more about the person making that argument than that argument itself. So yes, we may say, oh, by chanting Hare Krishna you become free from bad habits. Well, that's true. But is that the key reason for somebody to be practicing Krishna consciousness? Maybe because that was the benefit they experienced. And that's why they are sharing that. And it's good because that's their conviction. But for somebody else it might be that they never had many serious bad habits. Maybe it was they wanted a more meaningful life. So generally, we all will, in our presentations of Krishna consciousness, emphasize certain aspects. And that's just because we have experienced those aspects. And that is good. But it's important that we, over a period of time, recognize that Krishna consciousness is bigger than our conception or our experience of Krishna consciousness. So we can infer that this is due to this. But it's not always that simple. So if somebody was terribly sick, and then they get cured of sickness, devotees pray, everybody prays for them and they get cured. And then you say, oh, it's Krishna's mercy. That's nice. But if somebody else is sick and they don't get cured, then we say Krishna's plan is inconceivable. Isn't it? So, now what I mean by this, that is it that Krishna was merciful at one time and not another time? No, Krishna has his own plan, and sometimes his plan's mercifulness is seen in our terms, and sometimes it's not seen in our terms. So are we saying that, this person was sick and because all the devotees prayed so he got cured? Now does that mean that we are saying that the doctors did the treatment, that was not important? No, there are multiple factors, but in this particular analysis, we are focusing on this factor. So a focus on a particular factor does not necessarily mean that is the only factor in the picture. But we are focusing on that particular factor. Okay? Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for coming back to ISV. Really nice classes. So, Prabhu, I have two questions. First one is a clarification. In one of your slides, in the 12.8 verse, wherein Krishna says, "Fix your mind on fix your."
You have got the siddhi to see the future. 12.8 I have not shown till now.
Prabhu, I think there was. Sorry, but there was this fix your mind, right? So fix your mind comes in 12.8 also.
Well, that is absorb the mind basically. That is.
Okay, yeah, that's what my question was. If because my understanding was 12.8 is about absorption. So okay, fix your mind is still in the realm of 12.9, right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So that was the clarification I wanted. And then the second question is about, again, on the lines of inclusiveness and about indirect preaching. In Ishopanishad, there is this verse that one result can be obtained from doing one kind of activity, and then there is other result that comes as a result of doing other kind of activity. So many a times, we may try to convince people, may not necessarily be directly, but then indirectly. So in that sense, I just wanted to know that, is where to draw the line, because it's very important. We sometimes may have the right motive, but then we may not do it the right way. So where to draw the line actually?
Where do we draw the line? It depends on our particular position and our disposition. Say, for example, if we are having a Bhagavatam class in the temple, and there we don't even use the word Krishna. We use the word ultimate reality, or we use whatever, some vague word like that, Then probably my authorities will, if I use that word, my authorities will tell you what is the ultimate reality. Isn't it? There are particular forums. Where particular forums, certain things are expected. So, if we are on a forum which is not, say, our institutional forum, or not a forum which we have created, if somebody else has provided the forum for us to speak, then we have to speak in a way that is within the acceptable limits of that forum. That's just normal human expectation. And there we can focus on maybe building bridges. In one sense, actually, some preaching is called as bridge preaching, but actually all preaching is bridge preaching. Because all preaching involves building a bridge between the audience, the speaker and the audience. But there are some bridges which are shorter, clearer. Some bridges may be longer and not so clear where they are going toward the end. So first is our position. Where are we? Who are we? And where are we speaking? Or where are we sharing? So there's a difference between how we share in an official forum that is provided by the movement and in some other forum or some personal interactions that may vary. Second thing is our particular disposition. So when I say that I'm not exactly saying that we should be inclusive. All that I'm saying is that there is abundant place for inclusiveness within bhakti. And there are some devotees who might not like inclusive presentation in terms of how they present it and how others receive it. There are people who want just black and white kind of things. This is it. If that's what they need, that's what they need to be given. That may not be they may not become the most, we could say, the best representatives of our movement to the broader world. But they will also attract a particular demographic. So the point is that being inclusive should not be seen as compromising. That is also being compassionate. So that is the only point I'm making, that it's compassion, it's not compromise. So Prabhupada was not compromising when he started life membership program. He was being compassionate. He recognized this is what people can take and this is what I will provide them. So drawing lines based on our position and our particular inclination, our disposition. So if we find that I just, using all these contemporary terms and presenting this, I can't do that. Well, then maybe focus on forums where we don't need to do that. So we can choose now our movement has become broad enough that we can also present bhakti at different forums. Some devotees can be teachers without necessarily having to teach to new people. You can take people within the domain of bhakti itself. There's such a long journey to go ahead. And then there is no need for being too aware of contemporary cultural trends or intellectual ethos or whatever. That's also okay. Some devotees need to be aware, and and those who are interacting with the world, they need to make themselves aware. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Haribol. So you had a question? Okay. Half the class is remaining till now. We'll rush through it, yeah. Okay. So, I talked about athachittam samadhatum na shaknosi maisthiram. Actually, 3/4 of the verse is remaining. Okay, no problem. So, maisthiram, Krishna says. So, now, normally it is relatively easy. It should be easy to focus our mind on Krishna because he's all attractive. But our taste is misdirected due to impurities. And because of that, we can't find satisfaction in the one who is the source of supreme satisfaction. Like iron filings are naturally attracted to the magnet. But if the iron filings are rusted, the iron is rusted, then they will not be attracted. So Krishna is talking about that situation over here. So na sthiram, that sthirata is not there. So what causes lack of steadiness? There could be broadly 3 things. There could be lack of wisdom, lack of desire, and lack of skill. So lack of wisdom means we may not be yet philosophically convinced that actually Krishna is all attractive. That Krishna is the ultimate pleasure principle. For that we need to study scripture. So otherwise people may say, oh, Krishna is just, what, okay, there in the Hindu pantheon, there are so many deities and Krishna is one particular deity over there. Well, it's not just that. He's much more than that. So we need philosophical understanding. Aham sarvasya prabho, Krishna says. So that's where study of Shastra, and when we talk about Kirtanam, it is not just chanting the holy names, it's understanding the glory of Krishna so that we understand he is the ultimate pleasure principle. That's wisdom. Now, even after we have wisdom, we have that intellectual conviction. That doesn't necessarily mean our mind will be immediately attracted. So this mind and intelligence, I'll talk when we discuss 12.8, a little bit more. If our mind is not yet won over, then what happens is, okay, I know this is good, but I don't feel good doing it. So maybe I don't want to do it. So that desire is not there. So the knowledge has come, but the desire has not yet come. This is often the state for most of us. It's like, that's why the idea is, metaphor uses medicine. That I may not taste good, syat Krishna nama charitadi stapya vidya. That even if it doesn't taste good, take it, the taste will come gradually. And the third is lack of skill. What do we mean by lack of skill? That even if I understand that, okay, Krishna is the ultimate reality, and I want to become attracted to Krishna. I want to remember Krishna. But what does remembering Krishna mean? Does it mean that I don't do my job, I don't talk with family, there was, in our early days of Krishna consciousness, we would have how not to be Krishna conscious. We would have skits like that. So, like somebody is distributing books, and while distributing books, they finish talking, and when the other person starts talking, they start thinking, you are just doing prajalpa. So I'll chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Just keep chanting. And the other person feels so disrespected by that. Isn't it? So, okay, does remembering Krishna mean constantly chanting the holy names? Okay, if constantly chanting the holy names doesn't mean that while somebody is talking with us, we chant the holy names. No, it doesn't mean that. So, we need the right skills of what does it mean to be Krishna conscious. So, if I'm talking with someone, and then they are responding to me, how can I be remembering Krishna if they are talking something? Well, I can see that in their speech, maybe some opening will open for me how I can serve Krishna in this situation. How can I help this person clarify their understanding so that they can come closer to Krishna? So remembering Krishna can mean many things. So the skill is also required. What does remembering Krishna mean? And that's what the 10th chapter of Vibhuti Yoga is in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is thinking, I have to fight a war. How can I remember Krishna at that time? Krishna says that, Vibhuti, you will see great warriors with great abilities. You will see great weapons. And see, all this greatness is coming from me. So see, this is Brahmastra, but it's not just coming from Brahma. It is, actually Brahmastra is not the Brahma. It is Astra, sorry, Brahman. But whichever it is, we consider the Pashupatastra. It is not just coming from Shiva. Lord Shiva's problem, Maya Iva Vihitan Hitan. His power is coming from me. So see, in the world, in the war field, whatever attracts your attention, see that coming from me. So in that way you can remember me. That's a skill. So now here, Krishna is focusing on Mam Ichchaptum Dhananjaya. He's presuming that if you have come to this level, with the previous level is Mat Karma Paramo Bhava, work for me. That means we have understood that Krishna is the ultimate reality. But how do we get the level of coming to the desire for Krishna? And that is where Abhyasa Yoga. Now, Abhyasa Yogena Tato Mam Ichhaptum Dhananjaya. Now this question comes up, Abhyasa Yoga, is this some kind of new yoga in the Bhagavad Gita? There is Karma Yoga, there is, which are the yogas primarily in the Bhagavad Gita? Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So basically 4 yogas. So what is this Abhyasa Yoga as such? So generally the way the word yoga is used in the Gita is, there are specific path, it refers to a specific path for spiritual growth. And these are the 4 yogas which are discussed over there. Now yoga, the word has generic meaning is what? It just means connection, as we know, connecting or harmonizing. And the specific meaning is a particular path for connecting. So yoga Krishna uses the word yoga in both the generic sense and the specific sense at times. And in different chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna may use the same word yoga, but he means different things. In the second chapter, in the third chapter, he says that lokesmin dvividhanishta pura prokta yoga. There he uses the word yoga to refer to karma yoga. In the 6th chapter, when he is using the word yoga, he is referring to Ashtanga yoga. So what happens is there is a lot of context. So to understand what Krishna means when he uses the word yoga. So what does Abhyasa Yoga mean? Well, it is definitely not a separate process on its own. To understand this compound word Abhyasa Yoga, let's look at a more common word in the Bhagavad Gita, that is Buddhi Yoga. Now what is Buddhi Yoga? This is also not a new process. So Buddhi Yoga Krishna uses in 2 senses. The Buddhi that leads to yoga and the yoga that provides Buddhi. That with intelligence we learn I should connect myself spiritually. So the Buddhi that leads to yoga and the connection that provides spiritual intelligence. The yoga that provides Buddhi or leads to Buddhi. So let's look at both these meanings within the Gita. Now the word Buddhi Yoga comes many times in the Gita, but I'll focus on 3 usages. So in 239, Esha te abhita ya sankhe buddhi yoge tvinamishnu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandhan prahasyasi. So here when Krishna uses it, what is he saying? Prior to this 211 to 230, he has talked about the Atma. So here he uses the word buddhi to refer to knowledge of the Atma. So knowledge of the soul that inspires us to connect with spiritual reality. That is Buddhi Yoga in 239. Then another famous verse where he uses the word Buddhi Yoga is 10:10. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. So here Krishna is saying that you practice bhakti in a favorable way, priti purvakam, and by that, if you are unclear how to serve me, I will provide you the clarity. So here it is referred to, it's not just the Atma Gyan. It is actually the knowledge coming from Krishna, that is Buddhi. And by that what will happen is, Ye namam upayanti te. You will come to me. So here Buddhi Yoga refers to something different. That's why I said yoga that provides Buddhi. That's the meaning over here. And then 1857 Krishna talks about it. Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matparaha buddhi yogam upashritya macchitta satatam bhava. So here he is talking about that how to take shelter, how to practice bhakti yoga. Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya. With your consciousness, in all your work, you offer the fruits to me. Matpara, knowing that I am the ultimate purpose of life. In this way, buddhi yoga upashritya macchitta satatam bhava. Always be conscious of me by the practice of buddhi yoga. So the idea over here is that if we understand that Krishna doesn't just exist in the temple. Krishna exists in our home, Krishna exists in our office, Krishna exists on the road when we are driving, Krishna exists everywhere. The knowledge of Krishna's all-pervasive position will enable us to take shelter of him everywhere, to see all our activities as being done in a mood of service to him. So here Buddhi Yoga, in one sense, is the buddhi that leads to yoga. But the yoga here is bhakti. And buddhi here is not Atma Gyan, nor is it knowledge coming from Krishna. It is our knowledge, knowledge coming from Krishna. There in 10:10, Krishna is referring to more internally, the Paramatma giving us Gyan. Here it may be more textual study By our Shravanam Kirtanam, we get the knowledge. And then that gives us the determination. I want to turn toward Krishna. I want to be Krishna conscious in all situations as much as I can be. So the word Buddhi Yoga in that sense is like an elastic term. So, like if you have something elastic, it can be stretched. So Buddhi Yoga has multiple meanings. So at the lowest level, Buddhi Yoga means, it refers to Karma Yoga. The knowledge of Atma Gyan by which one can pursue transcendence in whatever generic conception one may have. At the highest level, it is that intelligence as a part of Bhakti Yoga. That means I am already practicing Bhakti and Krishna gives me intelligence to make better choices. So that is the highest level. And the intermediate level is that, okay, I use intelligence to engage in Bhakti. So just as Buddhi Yoga is a elastic term, meaning multiple things. Similarly, Abhyas Yoga is also an elastic term. So Abhyas basically means practice. The word Abhyas comes famously in one verse in the Gita. Which one is it? Sorry? Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagena cha gruhyate. Krishna says that how do you risk, the mind is very difficult to control, but it's possible by Abhyasa. That's one of the things. And there Prabhupada translates Abhyasa as practice. So what is the implication of Krishna when he uses the word Abhyas over there? He's essentially saying that don't expect that you decide the mind should be controlled and immediately the mind will become controlled. No, change your expectation. I want to focus, but the mind will get diverted. That's how it is. But that doesn't matter so much. So, at this point, when Krishna is talking about Abhyasa, he doesn't say what to focus the mind on. In this particular stage, in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, at this particular stage, Krishna is saying just focus the mind. Focus on the process of controlling the mind, not on what is the object of the controlled mind. That will be revealed later in 647 when he talks about Yoginam api sarvesham, that the topmost yogi fixes the mind on me. So to understand what Abhyas Yoga means, we have to consider the context. So in the 12th chapter context, when Krishna is saying Abhyas yogena tato mam ichchhaptum dhananjaya, the whole 12th chapter is about Bhakti Yoga. In 12.1 to 7, Krishna is comparing impersonal and personal meditation. 12.8 to 12, Krishna is talking about various levels at which you can practice Bhakti. And 12.13 to 20, Krishna is talking about the qualities that endear a devotee to him. So in this context, yoga refers to Bhakti Yoga. So in this context then, Abhyasa Yoga means practice to focus the mind on Krishna. So Abhyas generally means practice. Yoga generically means a spiritual connection. But here Abhyasa Yoga means Abhyas for Bhakti Yoga. Practice to fix the mind on Krishna. So if the mind doesn't naturally stay with Krishna, conscientiously strive to focus the mind on Krishna. So Abhyasa Yoga is also an elastic term. It can refer at one level to any kind of practice for focusing the mind. So even if somebody does general mindfulness exercises, that also can be called as Abhyasa Yoga at one level. But when we try to focus the mind on Krishna during our chanting of the holy names, that is also Abhyasa Yoga. That is Bhakti Yoga. So there are multiple levels. And Krishna says, Abhyasa yogena tato. What will happen by that is, Mam ichchhaptum dhananjaya. You will get the desire for me. Now this is where some people feel that actually, love should be spontaneous. When I feel like going to the temple, I will naturally go. When I feel like chanting, I will chant. So that call should come from within. It shouldn't be forced. Well, yes and no. See, whenever somebody uses particular words, the words themselves have some significances. When you say it should be forced, yeah, everybody's going to say it should be forced. But there is a difference between forcing in the sense of like tying up one's hands and legs and dragging someone, and there is also force in the sense of intellectual persuasion. There is force also in terms of, to some extent, social pressure. So like children, should they be forced to go to school? Well, not forced in the tying up their hands and legs. But parents do have to push the children. Children may not naturally want to go to school. So when we use the word force, what do we mean by the word force? In one sense, any constructive change requires some amount of force. But what kind of force is required? So is love spontaneous? If you are talking about love in terms of love for Krishna, is it spontaneous or is it something which has to be effortful? Is it conscientious? Well, it depends. It can be spontaneous. Some people may just come to a temple and they just be attracted to Krishna. And if that happens, in some ways our relationship with Krishna can be like our relationship in this world. Now, two people can meet for the first time, then they feel naturally attracted to each other. So, can there be a love at first sight? Well, maybe, maybe not. But the question is there love after many sights? That is the test of the relationship. Whether there is spontaneous attraction in the beginning or not, okay, that varies. If it is there, okay. If it is not there, that's also okay. So similarly, for some people, if they have already practiced some purva samskar or they have some cultural upbringing, they may have spontaneous attraction toward Krishna. But that is not the key thing. The key thing, what is initially spontaneous may stay or it may go. It has to move from, so whether the beginning is spontaneous or not, the intermediate will usually be conscientious. And then eventually one will come to spontaneous. So, this anushilanam, which in the Bhakti Samasa, the definition of bhakti is anushilanam, cultivation. So, abhyasa yoga. So, we may say that, okay, if I just mechanically am uttering the holy names, how will this lead to attraction to Krishna? This is mechanical, this is not love. Well, it's not that simple that what is mechanical cannot be loving. It can become loving. Sometimes, most of the times when there is loving interactions, it's not that every time there is the emotion of love over there. But there is still, the mechanical activity is done. Say, if there's a newborn baby and the mother or the father has had a long day, and then the baby suddenly starts crying at night. Now, it's not that when the baby starts crying, the mother suddenly feels an overwhelming flood of love rising in the heart. In the middle of the night, it may not feel, but still, there's a mechanical activity. Pick up the child, comfort the child, maybe give some food. And by that mechanical activity being done repeatedly, gradually affection will emerge. And affection will become stronger. So, even if there is an initial euphoria, that initial euphoria will also not last for long. So, the key thing is, bhakti will, based on, for different people, there will be different elements which may be spontaneous and different elements which will require conscientiousness. So rather than seeing love as it has to be this or it has to be that, it is going to be a combination of both. And the key thing is, if we expect it to be spontaneous, then it won't stay spontaneous, it will become sporadic. Sporadic means it will be interrupted. And then it will only over time, it will become stopped also. So we need it for it to be conscientious. And then last thing Krishna says is, what is the result of this? Mam ichchaptum dhananjaya. So by this seemingly mechanical practice, the mind goes off, bring it on Krishna. It goes off, bring it on Krishna. By this, our desire for him will rise. So whatever practice we do, it has a purpose. Like if somebody shooting archery, is practicing shooting arrows, it's practicing archery. Now, it is not just practice that leads to improvement. It is purposeful practice that leads to improvement. It's like somebody is trying to shoot, each shot they have to be aiming for the bullseye. If they're not aiming for the bullseye, they may shoot 1,000,000 arrows. But the 1,000,000 arrows will keep going in 1,000,000 directions for millions of years. Isn't it? So, practice alone doesn't lead to improvement or perfection. Actually, in one sense, we humans never become perfect. We are imperfect beings. But it is purposeful practice that leads to improvement and, if at all, some degree of perfection. So, what is the purpose of our practice? So, Krishna is saying, it is to obtain desire for him. Mam ichchaptum dhananjaya. Now we may say, if I didn't have desire for Krishna, why would I even do abhyasa yoga? Isn't it? Why would I even try to fix the mind on Krishna if I didn't have desire for Krishna? So I'll conclude with this point. See, this I'll come more in the last session on mind and intelligence. We can say there are two kinds of desires for us. So we can call it, in psychology sometimes they call it as first order desires and second order desires. In our philosophy, you can say the desire that comes from the intelligence and the desire that comes from the mind. So what happens is, The Krishna also talks about this in na kama kami. In 2:470 he says, do not be a desirer of desire. What that means is the first order desire is that as soon as we see something, a desire comes up within us. Say for example, if we see some delicious food, I want to eat it. That's the first order desire. And maybe that's not the healthiest food for us. Maybe that's not the food that we want to take according to the principles that we are following, whatever it is. But the first order desire may come. The second order desire, so first order desire is what comes through the intelligence. The second order desire, first order desire comes from the mind. Yeah, good. And then the second order desire is what comes from the intelligence. So when Krishna is saying, Mam ichhaptum dhananjaya, what he means is that if we didn't have any ichha at all, then we would not be practicing bhakti. But for most of us, what keeps us in the practice of bhakti is the second order desire. It's not that when in the morning when we wake up, we hear the alarm, oh, I want to wake up and chant Hare Krishna now. No, we don't feel like that. Hey, I want to sleep for some more time. But that first order desire comes, but then, no, this is important for me, and I want to do this, it will purify me, it will help me develop love for Krishna. That second order desire comes up. So that second order desire is something which comes from our association, from our intellectual conviction, from our social environment. But over a period of time, our bhakti should become our first order desire. That means as soon as a devotional opportunity comes up, the desire should come up. So when Krishna is saying, Mam ichhaptum dhananjaya, he's talking here not about the intellectual desire, the desire which is coming from our intellectual conviction, but it is coming from the natural attraction of the mind. And when that happens, then we start graduating to the first level. And he says, Dhananjaya, he uses the word. This refocusing on Krishna, when we keep doing this again, Abhyasa Yoga, it will transform us. It is magical, it is magically transformational. So, Krishna uses the word Dhananjaya over here. Dhananjaya means the winner of wealth. So it's interesting that the last word that Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita is also Dhananjaya. Kachideta shrutam partha tvayekagrena chetasa kachidajnana sammoha pranashtaste Dhananjaya. In 1872, the last word Krishna speaks is Dhananjaya. What it means is that Krishna actually speaking the Bhagavad Gita to help all of us find the ultimate wealth. So the ultimate wealth of wisdom, the ultimate wealth of devotion, the ultimate wealth of desire for Krishna. We all have so many desires, and different desires have different levels of influence on us. But the most enriching desire, the most empowering desire, the most transformational desire that we can ever have is the desire for Krishna. One who has that desire for Krishna is supremely wealthy. And Krishna is saying, Mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. Oh, you who are the winner of wealth, attain the supreme wealth of desire for me. And just as you practiced archery for so many years and decades, so that you could protect your kingdom, so that you could expand the kingdom for Yudhishthir. Now, practice focusing the mind on me. And by this, you can become Dhananjaya in the highest sense of the word. So yes, fixing the mind on Krishna is difficult. But it is, although it is demanding, it is supremely rewarding. And that is the assurance that Krishna is giving through the word Dhananjaya. So I'll summarize. I spoke today broadly about, you could say 4 main points. First was an overview of the ladder of love, how Krishna offers multi-level approach to spirituality, not 1-0, but accommodating according to people, according to what a person can practice within Bhakti Yoga itself. Then I talked about first that atachittam samadhatum na shaknosi maisthiram. So how our consciousness comes from the soul, but the particular proclivities of consciousness come from our mind. And that from our conditioning around the soul. And that needs to be redirected toward Krishna. And Krishna is making a judgment. That's why there are multiple levels. But Krishna is not being judgmental. Because he's not using a tone of condemnation or any kind of negative tone in speaking about the various levels. He's just providing pathways for everyone. Then with Mai's theorem, what is the cause of unsteadiness? It could be lack of wisdom, philosophical conviction. It could be lack of desire, or it could be lack of skill. So, so by studying the Bhagavad Gita, we will get the philosophical conviction. And by practicing Bhakti Yoga, we will get the desire. And how to practice Bhakti Yoga, there are many different ways. How to remember Krishna. That is what we learn in the Association of Devotees through the Krishna consciousness movement. And then we discussed about Abhyas Yoga. There I elaborately mentioned how it's a elastic term. It's not another path, but it's a combination of two, and it can refer to different paths in different contexts. Just like Buddhi Yoga can refer to from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga. So Abhyasa Yoga can also refer to Ashtanga Yoga, or it can refer to Bhakti Yoga, or even general mindfulness based on what context is being used. And here Abhyasa Yoga refers to Bhakti Yoga because the point is Mam Ichchaptum. So the last point we discussed was, is love spontaneous or conscientious? When we talk about that, we are actually focusing only on the beginning. So beginning can sometimes be spontaneous, sometimes can be conscientious. But in general, for a loving relationship to develop, there has to be a certain level of conscientiousness which is required. And gradually that conscientiousness will give way to spontaneity. But it has to go through conscientiousness. So, although it is effortful, developing that desire for Krishna by practicing Abhyas Yoga, it is supremely rewarding. It will fulfill the import of Dhananjaya, not just for Arjuna, but for all of us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So, much of what I spoke today is based on these two new books that I have written on the Gita. This is Relishing Bhagavad Gita, and this is Bhagavad Gita Insights. So, these are both contain about 100 articles, and I showed certain diagrams, pendulums and boxes and ladders. So, all of them are there also in this book. This focuses more on Bhagavad Gita from a relational perspective. That's why Relishing Bhagavad Gita. It talks about how the Krishna-Arjuna relationship is manifested and developed through the various verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So when Krishna says Samoham Sarvabhuteshu or Patram Pushpam Phalam Doyam, what does this mean for Arjuna on the battlefield? So that's, for example, Anudvega Karam Vakyam, Krishna says. Don't speak in a way that agitates others, discipline of speech. How Krishna manifests that speech discipline in the Bhagavad Gita itself. That's described. So there are a lot of references to Mahabharata stories and how they are pointed to in the Bhagavad Gita's verses. So this is Relishing Bhagavad Gita. This is from a relational perspective study of the Gita. And this is Bhagavad Gita Insights. This is more from a rational perspective. So this is again 100 articles. Say when Krishna, like I talked about the word yoga, Krishna uses the same term to mean different things in different contexts. So in which context does Krishna mean what? What does karma mean? Karma itself has many different meanings. Or when Krishna tells us to be detached, how to be detached without becoming irresponsible or hard-hearted. So generally, if we read the Bhagavad Gita, some common questions that may come while reading the Gita from a rational perspective, those questions I try to answer in this. So these two books are available, and you can take them both as a set also, then there will be... so each of them is $15. If you take them together, it's $25. And some of you, we have as there's also a card deck was there. There's it's here? Oh, okay. That's a good example of absent-mindedness. So this is 365 quotes based on the Bhagavad Gita. This is a calendar deck, so you could just, it's not fixed with any particular year, so you can reuse it every year if you want. And this is a very accessible way of presenting spiritual wisdom to colleagues and friends. Several devotees have told me that they just keep this in their office desk, and then colleagues come and just look at a quote and they want to know more about it. And that gives them a segue for sharing some spiritual wisdom. So these are not direct Gita verses, but these are thoughts inspired by the Gita. So for example, based on the austerity of speech, 17:15, those who open their mouth without opening their mind end up having to eat their words. So we may have to live with pain, but we don't have to live in pain. That's based on 1858 in the Gita. This is also available in the calendar. And some of my older books, I written about 25 books before this. Many of you may be having those books. Those are also available over there. These 3 are new. So if any of you want, you can have them. I'll also be available if you want me to sign them. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the enlivening session. And as Prabhu was mentioning, the books are over there, so you can take a look at the books. And Prabhu will also be available for short discussions. Also, the 4th part of the session will be tomorrow morning at Achyuta Chaitanya Prabhu's home. So if you want more information, Achyuta Chaitanya Prabhu can provide that. So that will be the final session, the 4th part of the series. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So in the 4th part, I'll be speaking. Yeah, thank you. So in the 4th part, I'll speak on how we can develop absorption in Krishna. So is it something practical for us, or is it very lofty? And what does it mean in our day-to-day context, absorption in Krishna? That's what I'll discuss. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your wonderful class. All the sessions have been very enlightening. We have some announcements for the books, and I just want to remind everybody that following this immediately, we have a presentation on how to present Srimad Bhagavatam door to door and on the streets. So please stay for that. And today, we have for the book distribution, devotees are going out in different locations. One of the location is a festival 4 hours north from here. Kautukarna Prabhu and Naveen Prabhu both went there for book distribution. They took Bhagavatam sets as well. And one team is going to Muir Woods, as you all know, such a beautiful place and a best spot for book distribution. And we have door-to-door in Cupertino, Fremont, and possibly in Dublin as well. So please do check the WhatsApp group for the locations, and we will all go there around in the afternoon, around 1:30 or 2 o'clock. So now we will have a presentation on the Srimad Bhagavatam in just a few minutes. And the broadcast will end here, but the Zoom will continue. So if somebody wants to dial in on Zoom, they can dial in. Hare Krishna.